Hello everybody, I'm going to talk about the promises and perils of the open communication paradigm. And the titles for this talk are accessible in this link bit.ly/ICA 2020 panel. Basically it's a Google Doc where you can see the subtitles. Now, my name is Tanja Aitamurto. I'm assistant professor at the Department of Communication at the University of Illinois at Chicago. Let's start from the open paradigm. Open paradigm consists of various exciting, interesting developments in different fields such as open science, open data, open design, open government, free and open source software production, and open journalism. And the open paradigm is very interconnected. For example, open data contributes to open government practices, open government contributes to open data, and so on. Now I'm going to focus on two realms in the open paradigm today. I'm going to focus on open journalism and open policymaking. And I'll first define these concepts and then I'll discuss their promises and the challenges. Let's start from open journalism. In open journalism, the journalistic process and/or the product is opened up for public participation. In practice, this means that the online crowd is invited to participate in the journalistic process in multiple points. Crowdsourcing is an example of a commonly used open journalistic method. Crowdsourcing is a mechanism for knowledge search with an open call online for the crowd to perform a task. The locus of the power is within the crowdsourcer, as opposed to in common space peer production, which is another popular large-scale online collaboration method. In common space peer production, the power lies within the commons. Here is an example of crowdsourcing deployed as an open journalistic practice. The Guardian posted a call-out related to the coronavirus outbreak at the end of April. In this reader call-out, the newspaper asked the crowd to share their experiences about coronavirus testing in England. The crowd could submit their information online, and then the journalist would then process the information, do necessary fact-checking, and channel the information to their articles. Open journalistic practices can be used in many parts of a journalistic process. For example, in finding sources, ideation, need finding, and so on. And now that we know what open journalism is, let's talk about the promises of open journalism. What are the benefits of open journalism to society? I'm going to focus on two main benefits today: democratic value and epistemic value. The democratic value of open journalism can be divided into four aspects: transparency, accountability, deliberation, and empowerment. Let's start from transparency and accountability. There are two types of transparency in open journalism. First, there's horizontal transparency, when the crowd members can see each other's comments online. There's also vertical transparency, which refers to the transparency between journalists and the participants. These transparency mechanisms apply more broadly in open paradigm. For instance, in open government practices, open design, open science, and so on. Open journalism creates an accountability loop in which the journalists and citizens create a powerful alliance that watches the power holders and demands for accountability. The second aspect of democratic value in open journalism is deliberation. When there is horizontal transparency in the process, open journalism creates spaces for deliberation. In these spaces, participants can exchange opinions, learn from each other, and step out from their echo chambers. When using open journalistic practices, journalists can reach out to a broad, diverse population. This way, more people can get themselves heard. This increases diversity in crowdsourced input, which can lead to a more pluralistic public sphere. The second promise of open journalism is epistemic value, which means the knowledge-producing aspects. Open journalism produces both traditional, expertise-based knowledge and situated knowledge from the crowd. Okay, so we have now covered both the democratic and epistemic promises of open journalism. Let's move on to open government, and namely we're going to focus on open policymaking as an open government practice, and this is what we wanted to talk about today. With open government practices, we mean participatory, open, transparent practices such as publishing open datasets, open policymaking processes, and participatory budgeting. Open government practices are claimed to support democratic processes in various ways. And today I will focus on talking about open policymaking and its import to society. Similarly to open journalism, open policymaking makes the two promises to create both democratic and epistemic value. Crowdsourcing is one of the main methods in open policymaking, and it is often approached as a democratic innovation as defined by Graham Smith. Open policymaking practices such as crowdsourcing enable active citizenship when citizens can participate in a participatory lawmaking or other public policymaking initiative. For instance, the city of Palo Alto in California, they crowdsourced residents' feedback for their comprehensive city plan, which is like a blueprint for the city's future. The crowd was asked to submit their comments to the policy, and the city considered those and channeled some of those to the policy. Similarly, in Finland, the Ministry of the Environment crowdsourced the off-road traffic law reform. Again, the government invited the crowd to participate and submit their ideas to the law reform. Just like in open journalism, also open policymaking promises transparency, accountability, deliberation, and empowerment. The very same mechanism in transparency and accountability can work here. However, the difference is that in open policymaking, the crowd can demand accountability directly from the government, whereas in open journalism, it is journalism that acts as a mediator in the accountability loop. Transparency in open policymaking holds a promise of a more equal, informed, and engaged society. And now let's talk a bit about the civic empowerment aspect in open policymaking. Participating in open policymaking can create very empowering moments for participants. For instance, one of the participants we interviewed for one of our studies described their experience as follows. This is actually the first time in my lifetime when I feel that I'm really participating in making democracy and influencing decision making in the society. It feels much more real than just voting for some person. This sounds like a very profound experience where the participant felt like they were part of a making of democracy. Finally, open policymaking creates epistemic value similarly to open journalism. The government takes the crowd's input that can include new knowledge, opinions, perspectives, analyzes it, and synthesizes it for the policy reform. And so these were the two promises of both open journalism and open policymaking. They both hold the potential to create democratic and epistemic value. So now let's move on to the perils of the open practices. Let's start from false information. This is especially important in journalism, which is a practice attempting to depict the world as truthfully and accurately as possible. But the crowd can of course provide both false and correct information, and it is the journalist's job to verify that information. And the more information the open journalistic practices produce, the harder it is for the journalist to try to verify the facts. The problem of false information is the same in open policymaking. The government essentially, or the legal drafters there, need to verify the information. However, often in crowdsourced policymaking, the policymakers won't take what the crowd says as a fact, but rather they use the crowdsourced information as a catalyst for more research about topics that surface in these crowdsourced processes. The second peril that I want to discuss here briefly is something that we can call the false we. This means that when we ask the crowd for information or opinions, we should never think about that the crowd's input covers everybody. Crowdsourcing is based on a self-selected sample. It's not a random, meaning representative sample of the public. So the output cannot be used as a public opinion poll. And the limitation in accessibility to digital technologies also create restrictions in the reach of the open methods. There will always be a portion of people who will not even have a possibility to participate at all. The final challenge is that when we discuss open practices, we often have a very binary approach, like it is either open or closed, instead of thinking about open practices as a continuum. This is the same case both among scholars and practitioners. There is this thinking that open practices must be a stairway to heaven, there's no issues, it's just benefits, everything's gonna be great. It's like romanticizing the open paradigm. But on the other end of this binary, the open paradigm is thought to take us to the hell because of the changes it creates and risks it poses to the status quo. But instead of neither of these approaches, whether heaven or hell, I want to perceive the open paradigm more as a river which is slowly meandering through the more closed paradigm. The river is making its way, incrementally gaining new ground. It also faces obstacles and it's pushed back by the more closed paradigm, meaning the existing ground in this metaphor. The counterforce, the more closed paradigm, will always be there and it will also hold its ground and also it will gain more ground. It's not going to be going anywhere. So it will be a constant interplay between the new, more open practices and more closed, more traditional practices. I hope this river metaphor helps us to conceptualize it that way. Okay, so with this, I'm going to conclude my talk here, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments. Thank you so much.